Hopefully, this epic video will be as eye-opening as it is informative. Before some of you click thumbs down just because of the subject matter, you might want to watch the whole video first. This is one of those videos where no matter what I say, some people already have their minds made up and nothing's going to change that. Well, minds might not be changed about judging others, but hopefully it will open people's eyes a little bit more about themselves and their own health, because that's what this channel is all about. We get asked a lot, if you're so natural, why does Cara have breast implants? That's a great question, and after you watch this video, you might even be glad she has them. The purpose of this video is not to say whether they're good or bad. The purpose of this video is to inform, educate, and clear up some misconceptions, because there is so much fear-based information and just plain old outdated information out there. You'll hear from top experts in the field, some who did a 14-year study on the subject. I'm going to say my bit. We'll hear from some people in the field, and then Cara will come in and say her bit at the end. For those who think they know everything and have their minds made up, calm down, step back for a minute, take a chill pill. Everybody needs to hear this, because this is really about much more than just breast implants. This directly involves you, all of you, in the modern world. Alright, Cara got hers over 20 years ago. She'll explain why later in the video. I didn't know her back then, and this has nothing to do with why I love her. Anyway, what's important for this video is that she's had them for over 20 years. Why? Because she's in better health than almost any woman in this country. She's in the top 1%. How could that be? She has implants for 20 years. Luck? Genetics? Some of you are probably saying, wait till they open her up and look around in there. Well, they did 6 months ago. And guess what they saw?
In speaking about Cara, having had implants in for 20 years when her surgery was done, as long as I have her permission to say, the capsule was pristine. There was nothing that I saw unusual.
She was pristine. How come after 20 years she was fine and other women aren't? We'll get into that in a minute, but first let's clear up the air about the big question, how can we say we're natural? We never ever claim to be all natural. That's impossible. Even if you were naked in the woods, you would still be toxic. 100% of all breast milk tested in this country had jet fuel in it. 100%. The air, the water, almost everything is toxic to some degree. The oceans are polluted, radiation is almost everywhere, microwave towers from cell towers are frying your brain right now. No one can claim to be natural. Anyone who does is unrealistic. Our job is to show not how to be natural, but how to be healthy despite exposure to toxins in the modern world. That's the most important statement in this whole video. Let me say this again. We show you how to be healthy despite exposure to toxins in the modern world. Remember the video I did on the people who were exposed to nuclear radiation and survived while everyone else around them died? If there's even a slight chance to overcome something, we'll show you how to do it. We live in Las Vegas, where they did over 800 nuclear tests over the last 70 years. 800 nuclear explosions! That's more than anywhere else in the world. Yet we live here and we are in better health than ever before. If we can find a way to live a healthy life despite constant exposure to toxins, and we are living proof, then we have something extremely valuable in this modern world to offer. We are your guinea pigs. Okay, so are breast implants really toxic? Depends. When they were made, who made them, and the lifestyle and the habits of the person who got them. We're going to get into the details in a minute, but I gotta say this. Those people that leave the negative comments, almost every person who's ever attacked Cara or women like her had something 10,000 times more toxic implanted in their body than breast implants. In a few moments, I'm going to shock you. But let's start with the implants. You've heard the horror stories of the implant rupturing and silicone leaking out and spreading out throughout the body and causing all kinds of autoimmune issues and illnesses. Yes, some of that is true, but the ones that had the bad runny silicone were in the 70s and 80s. They don't make those anymore.
There have been 6 generations of breast implants that have been made.
Those were the implants back in the day in the 80s and 90s, which were a very different consistency, very like a maple syrup sort of consistency. And they had a significant leak rate. their leak rate was about 50% at 10 years. And that's where you get the adage of, oh, you got to take these out every 10 years. That was true back in the 80s and early 90s.
That was one of the implants that was implicated in the problems. Long story short is the Food and Drug Administration, David Kessler, back in 1992, declared a moratorium on silicone implants. Took them off the market, and in the next 14 years, from 1992 till 2006, the implants were studied in what was called the adjunct study, where the implants were placed in women only after they'd been evaluated. They couldn't have evidence of connective tissue diseases. They couldn't have evidence of illnesses that were proposed to be caused due to silicone implants. And then they were followed. They were followed by clinical exams, and they were followed with MRI, and as to whether or not they became sick. So finally, after 14 years, on the 17th of November 2006, the Food and Drug Administration approved silicone implants for everyone's use. And I was involved in that study from the very beginning, as was my staff. We saw patients and still have the data that we submitted to the FDA and the implant manufacturers.
Early models of anything have issues to work out. In the 1950s, when commercial jet airplanes first came out, they were falling out of the sky at an alarming rate. Lots of people died horrible deaths. I guess they should have banned jet airplanes then. But over the years, they got better and better, and nowadays, you don't even think twice before getting on a plane.
Technology has gotten better. Just as technology has gotten better in cars with crumple zones and airbags, implants also have gotten better over the years.
Over the course of the next 40 years, the implants have gone through so many different variations.
Technology is advancing so rapidly it'll blow your mind. But many of the old stories still linger, and some people still say they get sick from implants. But we'll get into that in a minute. Let's get back to how far they've come. The ones they use nowadays, you can literally cut them and nothing happens. Everything stays where it is, nothing leaks anymore.
It's designed that doesn't leak outside of that shell.
All right, but what is silicone? What is it? It's mainly silica, the most abundant mineral in your body. It's what all connective tissue in your body is made with. They make heart valves with it.
If you think about silicone, it is virtually ubiquitous. It's in everything we do, from the baby's pacifier to the coating on the IV that goes in somebody for an IV treatment. It's in lipstick. It's in makeup. It's in, if you have a pacemaker, it's coated in silicone, heart valves, all these things. So silicone has been around a long time.
If it was that bad and the body really rejected silicone, they sure wouldn't make heart valves out of it and put it into people who are in a delicate, fragile state.
There's been women walking around with leaky implants for years and have had no problems. And I know that because I see that in my office. People here in Las Vegas have had implants in for a long time, and some of them never got around to getting them out. And so they come in 20, 30 years later and say, yeah, I know I was supposed to be here on year 10, it's year 30. And they're okay. That really, thankfully, by and large, has gone away with the advent of the new implants.
Okay, but there are some chemicals used in the manufacturing of silicone. They were a lot worse 30 years ago than in those older ones, and those are where a lot of the horror stories come from. There's a book, there's actually lots of books, but there's a book called The Naked Truth about breast implants. It mentions a bunch of issues, but most of those is from the early models. Like it talks about platinum being used as a catalyst. They don't use platinum anymore for a catalyst. It lists a bunch of chemicals that were used, many of which are neurotoxins like methyl ethyl ketone. Have any of you ever worked with methyl ethyl ketone, or MEK as it's known? I have. I used it when I was working in Hollywood in the 80s. It's one of the most toxic substances I have ever come across. It is so strong, so powerful, you can smell 2 drops from over 100 feet away. If 1/100th of a drop was near your face, you could definitely smell it. This is a breast implant. 2nd generation. Nothing. Nothing. For one thing, MEK is highly volatile. It oxidizes, meaning it dissipates very quickly into the air. The human body is exposed to all kinds of toxic things every day and is constantly cleansing itself and getting rid of stuff. If there is any tiny amounts of chemicals, a healthy body should have no problem getting rid of it if it's functioning correctly.
Sometimes we won't operate on folks if they're nutritionally unsound or if they're just plain sick.
I literally referred patients to nutritionists. I've told them that they've got to eat a healthier diet because it's really not about just the breast or the tummy or the face. It's the whole body, and that's what our practice emphasizes. If we see somebody who's not in the best shape for surgery, because plastic surgery or revisional and reconstructive breast surgery is not a life it's a life-altering, but it's not a life-saving surgery, it's best that they be in the best health that they can. Nutrition, avoiding toxins, avoiding tobacco, all those things.
Those people that are nutritionally sound and that are physically sound do better.
When I was exposed to MEK back in the 80s, I got really sick from this stuff. I mean, really, really sick. Just one good whiff of pure 100% MEK can do more damage than this ever could. But guess what? My body cleared it out, and I'm fine now. And no, I don't have cancer 30 years later.
So I think it's a combination of things. Yes, I think that the implants are better, and gone are the days from the 80s and 90s where we had really leaky implants. So I think the implants are better. And now I think that we plastic surgeons have figured out that it's important to see what's going on with the patient of who the implant's going into, and they need to be healthy, as healthy as they can, and that there are behaviors, smoking, etc., that may really affect the outcome of the surgery and the long-term outcome of the implant.
In the case of saline implants, which are silicone bags filled with salt water, usually they're safe because if they ever leak, it's just salt water leaking into the body. No big deal. But there were a few instances, again in the past, and most of those done in questionable facilities, where the needle filling the bag got some bacteria on it, and that got into the bag and contaminated the saline solution. But again, that was rare.
The other aspect you talked about was the bacteria. The techniques involved in breast surgery, thanks to board-certified plastic surgeons doing research and thinking about biofilm. So biofilm, as you probably know, is that bacteria that gets into that avascular space where the body's immune system can't attack it. And if there is bacteria that gets in there, it can set up this what's called the biofilm. It's microscopic. You don't see it with the eye, and it can make the capsule get tight. That's what its primary implication is now.
So the issue may not be the implant itself. It may be the biofilm on top of it, or it may be within the capsule. And that, I think, is interesting. And some folks now are when they're taking out the capsule, they'll go ahead and send that for pathologic determination. Nowadays, that's gotten a lot better because most of the plastic surgeons use a closed system to go ahead and put the saline in, so it goes from a sterile area through a tube to another sterile area, so there's less possibility of inoculation. As we go down the line, I think that not only do the implants get better, I think our technique gets better.
The techniques that we use to put implants in now have improved so much that there should not be one bacteria that gets into there and cause a problem.
Okay, for those people who say it's not natural, what do you call natural? Who, in your opinion, in this world is natural? Would you say primitive cultures are natural? Those tribal people in Africa or the Amazon jungle, would you say they're natural? They alter their bodies with foreign objects even more than we do. And they're not sterile and applied in a sanitary hospital environment. They put more paint on their faces than we do. And they even color their hair. Does that make them fake, superficial, and insecure? No. Cara is definitely not insecure. Women by nature like to beautify things, their hair, their face, their home, and yes, their body. This is the same artistic expression even the most primitive cultures in the world do, cultures that we call in touch with nature and natural. If doing things like this means a person is insecure, then that would mean every painter, every sculptor, and every musician and every architect is insecure because they like to express themselves artistically. Come on, wearing clothes isn't natural. Neither is driving a car using a cell phone, but everybody does it. Not being natural does not mean it's evil. Okay, those of you who are quick to judge, let's talk about you. Almost everyone has something implanted in their bodies that's 10,000 times more toxic. It's in your mouth right now. The mercury in metal tooth fillings. Did you know that every bite you take, you are releasing a toxic cloud of mercury vapor into your bloodstream? They use special cameras that can see mercury gas that show how every bite releases a puff of mercury in your mouth. You are literally poisoning yourself with every bite you take. You're mixing it with food and absorbing it directly into your bloodstream. Mercury is one of the most deadliest substances known. Okay, so some people had those replaced with composite fillings. What's composite? Resin. What's resin? plastic. That's right, they have plastic in their bodies. Oh my God. But we're not trying to make those people feel bad about it. In fact, the average person's body is filled with a staggering amount of toxins and poisons, much more than someone with implants or someone like Cara. Do you drink out of plastic water bottles, the soft ones that can be squeezed by your hand? Because if you do, you're getting much more estrogenic plastic hydrocarbons in your body and bloodstream than someone with implants. And I'm talking about the ones that have water or liquid in it, not dry stuff, because water is a solvent. Do you heat oils in a pan? Do you drive a car? Do you use a cell phone? Do you live in a house? The cupboards and plywood in the walls of your house are bonded with formaldehyde, a super toxic neurotoxin that's outgassing into your highly insulated modern home 24 hours a day. That bed mattress you have your face buried in every day, by law, has cancer-causing fire retardant chemicals. What do you wash your hair with? Let me see the ingredients. What do you brush your teeth with? Those clothes you're wearing, what are the fabric dyes used to color them? And what are you washing those clothes with? Would you swallow what you're washing your clothes with? Because when you wear those clothes, you are absorbing that detergent through your skin into your bloodstream. Laundry detergent is poison, and your liver is filled with it. Add to that the fumes from the carpeting, the carpet padding, the drapes, the fumes coming off the computers, and the EMF possibly coming from the wiring in the walls. That gas chamber you're living in is a lot more toxic than a thin bag of medical-grade silicone filled with salt water. Even if you are a die-hard raw foodist, the air you breathe is toxic. There's all kinds of studies below. One study involving over 87,000 women showed no link between implants and connective tissue disease or rheumatic conditions. A review of 17 separate studies of the occurrence of connective tissue disease in the population was remarkable for the consistent finding of no elevated risk or indication of an association of implants with disease. Your body's your temple, so you're going to say, well, aren't implants disrespecting the temple? Some would argue it's beautifying the temple. But come on, look around. 90% of everyone out there watching this video is disrespecting their temple. Just look in the mirror. This is the unhealthiest society on earth, fueling themselves with dead foods that our bodies were never designed for. The three biggest killers are cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. No, it can't be the pizza, the beer, the sugar, the dairy, the Cheetos, the alcohol, and the pig fat. No. It's the implants. Plant an apple in the ground and you get an apple tree. Plant some bread or ice cream in the ground and watch what happens. The crap people eat are foreign objects, toxic to the body, that kill more people than all the wars, car accidents, plane crashes, and breast implants in the world. And people don't care. People's bodies nowadays are a grotesque abomination of what they're supposed to look like. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Of course, every woman who has implants and has health issues will swear they eat and live healthy. Well, I visited many of them. Their fridges were filled with bread, cheese, sugar, milk, crackers, all kinds of processed food. Most of their food was cooked. Almost none of it was raw plants. Their idea of healthy was high-sugar fruit juice and tiny salads smothered in ranch and blue cheese dressing. They washed their clothes in poisonous detergents, brushed their teeth, washed their hair with chemicals, drank out of plastic bottles, inhaled car exhaust, used cell phones, drank alcohol, lived in houses made from plywood, had toxic carpeting and cupboards, and shelves made of particle board bonded with formaldehyde, and yes, they all had metal tooth fillings. They had the same illnesses all the other people around them had who didn't have implants. But these women were lucky. They had something to blame.
I've operated on thousands of women with silicone implants. I can probably say less than 5 women who have said that they felt like they got better once their implants were out. And I think it's important to know that the women that have the implants that are ill, they have the things that are discussed: fibromyalgia, aches and pains, weight loss, lassitude, lack of energy. And I think one of the takeaways from the FDA's statement after all the study and all the science that was conducted was they felt like these women would have gotten sick anyway.
Eating in this day and age, in our food, we're exposed to lots of chemicals, which also happen to be part of the curing process or the manufacture process of implants. So it's sometimes hard to say, is this truly from the exposure to the implant, or is it exposure to something that is in my car, or that I'm putting on my body, or that sort of thing. Having said that, even the most organic living people that I know, and I did my plastic surgery up at UCSF, so there was a lot of people coming in from Northern California, and they were trying to live off the grid as much as they could and organic everything, which is spectacular. And they were confident enough to get implants. And they had them, and they had them for years and years, and they didn't have issues or problems. And those folks are hypersensitive to anything that's not natural or organic or didn't come out of the ground.
I have removed implants. And the other big factor is the women want the capsule removed, the scar that's around the implants, called a capsulectomy. And I do that every time I've done that since I've been in practice for 22 years. I've sent it off to the pathologist. They've looked at it, and I have not ever had anything come back that was abnormal or irregular that caused a problem from the thought to be due to the silicone.
Implants also have been the most tested thing that we put into the body, more than total knees or total hips, more than defibrillators, more than heart valves, because it's such an emotionally charged issue.
We will always have patients who feel like that they're made sick from their implants, but as you and I were talking about previously, I think that you have to look at the body as a whole. For a doctor to just immediately point to and say, I think it's your implants, I think that's not looking at the patient in total and getting them to try and be healthier about their life, seeing what medications they're on, seeing what other underlying disease conditions they have.
Wound healing is all about blood flow and oxygenation. And if you're not getting that, you're running a tremendous risk of the wounds not faring well, whether it's bad scarring, whether they open up, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with a high BMI. If people are too heavy and they come in and they get a tummy tucks, if you're over a BMI of 30, there's a 75% chance that you're going to have a problem with your wound. So it's not just what we put in, whether an implant, but also what we're sewing on. We always want to operate on the healthy patients we can, and they always tend to get the better result.
You know the body as well, if not better than I do, in terms of nutrition, biochemical reactions, and all that. And so if you think about the millions of women that have silicone implants and the millions of women who have not had any problems whatsoever, I think that maybe we don't know everything, but maybe there are some women who are of a certain genetic background, or they have certain nutritional deficiencies, or they come from a certain Scandinavian background. Who knows? That may react differently, right? That's why there's all the differences in our body. All I can do is practice on the science that I know and the experience that I've had.
3 million women in this country have breast implants. Are these 3 million women in worse health than others? No, maybe some of them are, but most are fine.
The implants we use now are really not much at all like the ones that were back in the 80s and 90s. The ones now have a much better safety profile than the ones before.
Again, the leaky toxic implants were from the 70s and 80s, and it wasn't all of them. Silica is the most abundant element on Earth. It's what beach sand is made of. It's the main element in all connective tissue in the human body. They make heart valves out of it. If it was that bad, 3 million women would be up in arms, and that would be the end of it.
We surgeons don't work in a vacuum, and I think it's always a partnership between the patient and the surgeon and the implant itself. Frankly, is you want to go ahead and operate on the healthiest people you can, both mentally and physically, et cetera, et cetera. But what you really want is to have somebody that's ready for surgery. Some of these folks that have had troubles with their implants, they have other comorbidities. A lot of the people that have had capsular scarring and capsular contracture, which people have issues with, and it's a real issue, but the rate of capsular contracture and scarring is higher in smokers, significantly higher. The folks that have had wounds fall apart, significantly higher in smokers. There are folks, models especially, that may have issues, but then you test their nutrition, and then you really talk to them, and their protein stores are shot. They don't have enough nutrients in their system. So by all means, I think that it's not just the implant, but also the body and the tissues that you put it into.
Sure, there's always exceptions to everything, and some people do have negative reactions, just like some people have allergic reactions to nuts or strawberries or other things. The reasons are often the same. They usually have a dirty liver. Cleaning the liver and making some diet and lifestyle changes often clears up food allergies and reactions to other normally benign substances.
If a woman has issues where she thinks that her breasts are making her ill, go in with your list of questions. Go in and say, kind of with a chronology if you can, when things happened. If it happened years later, have you had medical tests done to look at rheumatologic factors and see if you have lupus or scleroderma or some of these other conditions, and be tested. But at the same time, look at your life. Look at how you're leading things. Are you super stressed? Are you not getting enough rest? Are you not eating well? All those things are important, but by and large, it's important to be seen by a board-certified plastic surgeon who works with revisional breast surgery, takes care of patients all the time. But it's also good to see your regular medical doctor and to have proper checkups.
What do you think about people who are going to say, well, obviously he's going to say this, he's a plastic surgeon, this is his living. He's going to say everything's fine, there's no problems.
Yeah, no, and as I said before, I don't know everything. All I can base what I practice in my practice is on the science that I read, and it's not just done by plastic surgeons. The data that was collected and tabulated when the FDA made their decisions during their approval for silicone implants it was made based on input from rheumatologists, from regular medical doctors, not just plastic surgeons. So it's not just protecting our turf. I assure you, if there was one iota of evidence that showed that silicone caused someone to be ill, it wouldn't be in my practice. What's our credo? First, do no harm. And so I can appreciate someone asking that question because they think that I'm trying to protect my turf, but that's really not true. Every patient that comes through my door, if they think that their implants are making them ill, I say to them, I hope that you feel better after your surgery. I hope and pray that by removing your implants and the capsules and it being sent to the pathologist, I hope that it makes you feel better. I can't promise it, but I hope it does, because I think that there's, in addition to the biologic aspect, there's the mental aspect of how we feel.
But again, is it the implant that's an issue? Is it the shell that it's an issue? Is it the biofilm that it's an issue? Is it the capsule that's an issue? Does she have another systemic problem, and it's what's called true and unrelated, that you have implants in, you have a systemic problem, but they're not necessarily related?
Now, I know in response to this, you're going to get the letters and emails from women who claim otherwise, and all I can do is base it on my experience with close to 5,000 breast surgeries in a 22-year career and doing a lot of silicone implants.
By and large, the ones that we have lots of capsular scarring and capsular contracture with are usually those that were put in back in the 80s and 90s. When you get in there and there's an inflammatory response, there's sheets of calcium on occasion. That sort of thing really has not been as prevalent at all that I've seen going back in with the new gummy bear or cohesive gel implants.
The water pipes in your house, ask any plumber, this is a common thing. Water pipes commonly leak inside house walls, sometimes resulting in black mold. So should we not then allow plumbing in our homes? People don't get up in arms about plumbing. 1.3 million people die in car accidents every year. 1.3 million. Does that mean cars are bad? Should we outlaw them? The air you're breathing is toxic. Should we stop breathing? Personally, I would be much more concerned about the detergent you wash your clothes with that's soaking into your skin right now as you're watching this, and the food you're eating. But let's say implants are as toxic as some people think they are. The more toxic they think it is, the more we are proving our point that someone can still be healthy. How can you tell if something's fireproof? You try to burn it. How can you tell if something is waterproof? You stick it underwater. To show you how you can realistically still be healthy despite all this exposure, we need to be exposed to the same things. And if we can prove and show how to still live a long, healthy, happy life, then we will have truly offered something of value to everyone. If we were hippie extremists living naked in the woods, no one would relate to us or have anything useful to use in their normal life.
Oftentimes, the women who come in have 2 or 3 babies, and they nurse them and all of that. And they're not doing it for their husbands, and they're not doing it for anybody else. They're doing it for themselves. And I get a lot of, hey, doc, Can I just get back to where I used to be? I don't want to be a Playboy bunny or something like that. I just want to fill out the shirt kind of how I used to. I don't want to do the chicken cutlets anymore. And I'm doing this for me. And for me, that's one of the most rewarding things is just giving people some confidence back.
We're not better than you. We're not above you. We are in the trenches with you, testing and proving and sharing our results. We're all in this together. Some people might say, nah, but it'll catch up to you someday. It's been 20 years and she's in better health than anyone. It's not about being natural anymore. It's about being as healthy as we can despite the unnatural things we are exposed to on a daily basis. And if your body is fed what nature intended, cleansed and detoxed regularly, then it can handle just about anything, especially if you feel good about yourself and don't let negative people bring you down. So if you see someone trying to add a little beauty into their life, allow them the freedom and happiness to do so. If a woman wants to beautify her world a little bit, something that makes her feel good, why would you want to take that away from her? Do some people have nothing better to do than make other people feel bad? There is enough negativity in the world. She's not hurting you. Why would anyone want to hurt her? Do you knock on people's doors and tell them the flowers in their yard are ugly or that you don't like the color of their car? The worst toxin of all, the most toxic substance in the world is negativity and the judgment of others. You're killing yourself with every negative thought you have. You're poisoning yourself with it. One of the oldest living women in the world smoked till she was 100 and she lived a decade beyond that. Now they're saying olive oil is bad for you. Bernardo LaPalla, who I interviewed, used it every day of his life and lived to be 114. And yet there are diet and lifestyle experts and extremists dropping dead at 60 or 70 because they're just too uptight. Okay, let's hear what Cara has to say.
As a female, we tend to want to beautify everything around us. Myself, I love to beautify my garden, my home, and my body. And as a young mother, after breastfeeding for years and always all my life maintaining a certain body type for myself, I would look in the mirror and cry. I couldn't believe what happened to my upper body after I was finished breastfeeding. And then I heard about breast implants and that they could actually correct what was wrong with my breasts. They were pancakes. It was terrible. So I did my research. I found saline to be safer than silicone, and I found a board-certified surgeon with wonderful reviews, and I ended up getting this procedure. And it was like overnight. I was a completely different person. My confidence level was through the roof, and I just felt so much better about myself and my body. And I know a lot of women that don't need to have this procedure to feel good about themselves. And I so respect that, and I admire that so much. I'm not like that, though. And in turn, I just wish that they would respect my decision as well and my outlook on this. I never had a problem with my implants. I've had them for about 23 years. If I would have had a problem with them, health-wise, I immediately would have had them removed because my health trumps everything. But it was fine. I didn't. But after about 23 years, I felt, it's a long time to have something like this in your body without, being checked. And they were a little too big for my personal preference anyway. So I had them removed, checked, had my entire upper body checked. The doctor was able to look at my old implants and tell me that they were fine. There was no issues with them, leading me to believe that all my decades of taking care of myself, not eating unhealthy food or processed food or animal products, that has allowed my body to be able to handle not only implants, but a lot of everything else that's out there. There's an airplane right there. Jet fuel from the airplane, this toxic air, toxic water. We're bombarded with toxic elements everywhere in our daily lives. I'm healthy despite the unhealthy world that we're living in. would I do it over again? Yes, it's brought me a lot of satisfaction. It spared me a lot of resentment and sadness. And if I was able to avoid those feelings, then I'm glad I did what I did. It's a personal decision, and like other personal decisions, it should be respected. And I'm sorry if people don't understand or still can't understand where women like us are coming from. I understand where you guys are coming from. I just wish you guys could kind of understand where we're coming from and our desire to look feminine. You know, feminine body has a little breast and a little curves, and I like to maintain that for as long as I can. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody. That was not my intention. The reason I did this was for myself. So, okay.
It's time we stop looking for faults in others and ways to cut people down and start looking for things to be thankful for, honoring people's choices and allowing them to express themselves in ways that make them happy. They're just adding a little beauty into the world. Your body is your home, and women like to beautify their home. Why do women plant flowers in the backyard? Why do they wear pretty dresses, fix up the house, and wear lipstick? Because it's a woman's nature to beautify things. They don't start wars or kill things. They don't destroy, they beautify. If a woman wants to beautify herself and it makes her feel good, it's her right. It's time we made the world a happier place of creative freedom and expression.